For those unfamiliar with the Scriptures, it can be challenging to grasp that the natural laws we see today largely emerged after the fall of man, when Adam sinned and the earth was cursed. Jesus, however, set aside these natural laws whenever it was necessary to bring blessings to humanity. When Satan is finally bound and cast into the abyss, these laws will no longer apply. Due to a lack of understanding, many people hold God accountable for accidents, the illness and loss of loved ones, and natural disasters like storms, earthquakes, and floods. Even insurance companies label these calamities as acts of God, but they are not His doing at all. God is not responsible for any of these events, nor is He the source of them. Death is not authored by God, and He should not be blamed. Accidents, illnesses, suffering, death, and calamities are consequences of humanity's fall. The instigator behind these afflictions is Satan. Before Adam encountered sin and Satan, he experienced no illness. Dr. John Alexander Dowie, a key figure in reintroducing divine healing to the Church in the 20th century, stated, "Disease is the vile offspring of its father, Satan, and its mother, sin." In the 1870s, while Dr. Dowie was leading a congregational church in a Sydney suburb, a devastating plague ravaged Western Australia, causing widespread fatalities. Years later, he recounted a moment in his study when he was overwhelmed with grief, resting his head on his arms and crying out to God with questions like, "Are you the source of sickness and disease? Did you unleash this dreadful plague upon us? Will my entire congregation perish? What is the origin of this plague? Who is responsible for it?" Dr. Dowie had already buried 40 members of his congregation, with 4 more awaiting burial after visiting over 30 parishioners who were gravely ill. In that moment of despair, he recalled the illuminating words from Acts 10 verse 38, which revealed Satan as the defiler and Christ as the healer. "My tears were dried," Dr. Dowie reflected, "and my spirit was renewed. I recognized the path to healing, and the door was wide open. I prayed, God, empower me to share your word with all those who are suffering, to show them that it is Satan who corrupts, while Jesus brings salvation, for He is the same today." He didn't have to wait long for an opportunity. Moments later, 2 young men rushed into his study, breathlessly urging him, "Please come quickly. Mary is dying." Without a moment's hesitation, Dr. Dowie dashed after them, furious that Satan had targeted this innocent young woman from his congregation. Upon entering Mary's room, he found her in convulsions, while her doctor, having lost hope, was preparing to leave. Dr. Dowie's heart was ablaze with the word of God. "God's way," he proclaimed with fervor. "How can you dare to call that God's way?" "No, sir, that is the work of the devil." He confronted the physician, a member of his congregation, asking, "Can you pray the prayer of faith that heals the sick?" The doctor responded, "You're far too agitated, sir. It's better to say, God's will be done." And with that, he departed. Isn't it curious? Many people don't see it as opposing God's will to prolong life through medicine, machines, and various means, yet they believe that praying for life is somehow against God. When someone passes away, they simply label it as God's will. Still seething from the enemy's assault, Dr. Dowie offered a prayer of faith. Miraculously, the girl's convulsions stopped instantly, and she slipped into such a profound sleep that her mother and nurse feared she had died. "She's not dead," Dr. Dowie reassured them. After a few moments, he roused Mary, who turned to her mother and exclaimed, "Mother, I feel so good." Recalling how Jesus had healed the little girl He raised from the dead in the Scriptures, Dr. Dowie asked, "Are you hungry?" "Oh, yes," she replied eagerly. "I'm so hungry." He instructed the nurse to prepare Mary a cup of hot chocolate along with some bread and butter. Then he moved to the next room, where her siblings were suffering from the same fever. After praying for them, they too experienced an immediate recovery. From that moment on, Dr. Dowie dedicated himself to teaching his congregation about divine healing and praying for their health. He never lost another member to the plague. As I left the home where Christ, the healer, had triumphed, Dr. Dowie reflected, I couldn't help but feel a sense of the victorious song echoing through heaven. Yet, I was also somewhat astonished by my own unusual actions, and even more by the realization that he is just the same today. This is how I began to preach the gospel of healing through faith in Jesus.